So let's talk about symbolism for just a moment. We're going to be talking about symbolism in writing narratives, but doing this can also help you when you're reading narratives as well. Symbols often are things that students can overlook in reading. So hopefully, by learning how to use them in your narrative writing, you can start to pick up on them in your own reading. So we'll be looking at using objects, using settings, and using characters as symbols in a story. Before we get into the symbols, though, we have to do one thing first. We've got to have a theme. Symbols don't really work if you don't have a message that's connected to it. So, what we're going to do is we're going to use a specific theme statement here, and then we're going to come up with some different ways that we could symbolize this as we go throughout our story. So, the theme I chose is just a basic one: friendship is worth fighting for. And so the idea here is that we're going to use all these symbols to reinforce this theme. So we're going to start first with characters. So characters are going to be already in your story, so they are a good place that you can start. And then what you just want to do is pay attention to how the characters are acting and what they're doing. So let's just say, for the sake of this theme, we're talking about friendship is worth fighting for. Obviously, we're probably going to need two friends. So maybe we start the story with two friends who are just really good buddies. But then somewhere in the middle of the story, something happens to cause them to break apart, whether it's a fight, whether it's somebody moving, anything like that that separates these two friends. And then probably by the end of the story, if we're talking about that friendship is worth fighting for, then they're going to make up, they're going to reunite and be friends again. So taking that and using that through the plot is going to help these characters symbolize this theme based solely on what they do and how they act in the story. Now, when it comes to characters and symbolism, there are two ways that we can develop the symbolism in characters. One is, like I just talked about, using the plot and conflict. So, just the simple series of events and the characters and the way that they act can be symbolic of that theme. The other thing we can use, depending on the story and the message, is character traits. So, in this particular theme, it might not work out. But if we have some kind of theme where we're talking about generosity versus greed, we can use character traits where one character is a generous character, another one is greedy, and then whatever message comes based on those characters, their traits, and kind of what they represent. So, characters, those are a good place to start when you're looking at symbols to express a theme. Now, what about setting? Setting is something that is often overlooked that can be very powerful to use in a story. So we got friendship is worth fighting for. What can we do as far as setting is concerned to symbolize this idea? Well, my first thought when I thought about this, if we're talking about friends growing up, they probably played on the playground together. So maybe there's a neighborhood playground where they used to play all the time. And I allude to that maybe in a little flashback or something. So we've got this setting, the playground, but wait, we get later on in the story, and all of a sudden this playground is overgrown, it's run down, it's not kept up. Now all of a sudden we have a setting connected to their friendship. Earlier in the story, when the playground looks all nice and shiny and new, so is their friendship. When we get to the later on unkept playground, then we can probably guess that they are not taking care of their friendship, that it's falling apart, that it's becoming some type of ruin. Uh, if we're going along with our theme, at some point later in the story, that playground is probably going to get taken care of again, whether it's by the characters themselves or maybe somebody else in the neighborhood who's doing it. And again, we could connect that to all kinds of things. Last thing, objects. Objects are probably the most common thing that is used for a symbol in a story. So this one may not be as big of a surprise to you, but we can take objects and we can use those in a story. When I'm talking about friendship worth fighting for, my first thought is, what about a friendship bracelet? Maybe the two of these characters have matching friendship bracelets. As the story progresses, the friendship bracelet becomes more frayed until it finally breaks off the wrist. And then again, if we're going back to the theme that friendship is worth fighting for, then somebody's going to mend that bracelet, which would then symbolically show that their friendship is being mended. Now, if we take all of those and put them together, we really solidify the theme. And the key to all of this is establish the connections. This is where being detailed and descriptive comes into play. The friendship bracelet is not going to symbolize their friendship if you don't do anything with it in the story. If it appears once and then is never mentioned again, then it's probably not going to be very symbolic. So take those elements and work with them throughout the story, and then you're creating a symbol and showing that progression. We take the characters, the setting, and that object, then those three together are really going to solidify to tell that story. So think about how you can utilize some of that stuff in your own narrative.